concept of Doctor Strange was that in the early 1960s, when Marvel was established, there were such books as Spider-Man, Fantastic Four, The Incredible Hulk, and The Avengers. These were some of the original stories that made up the core of the Marvel comic book universe that the Marvel that we know today came out of. However, soon with the success of those lines, Steve Ditko and Stan Lee began to discuss doing something possibly different, with Ditko originally pitching the concept of a magician or magic man to Stan Lee within the Marvel Universe. The idea was actually interesting as it would make another character that would be different than what DC was doing at the time. Lee decided to partially base the concept of this new character on an old radio program he had heard in the 1930s, Chandu the Magician. He actually had some slight problems coming up with a name for the character, who was originally supposed to be Mr. Strange. Neither of them thought it was a good idea because it sounded too similar to Mr. Fantastic of the Fantastic Four. So at the last minute, it was decided to call the character Dr. Strange. Critics denounced early Dr. Strange comics as being too occultish and devil-reading, simply because Steve Ditko and Stan Lee used mysticism as inspiration for these stories of Dr. Strange, as he would often use his magic to go to vast dimensions or battle extra-dimensional monsters. American post-Second World War baby boomers found the character and concept extremely fascinating. The discussion will now go to Dr. Strange himself, the people in his life, the foes he fights, as well as the mystic items he uses. Dr. Strange. First appearance, Strange Tales, issue 110, 1963. Origin, Strange Tales, issue 115, 1963. Doctor Strange, issue 169, 1968. Modern origin, Doctor Strange, issue 45, 1992. Stephen Vincent Strange was born in the year of 1930 within the city of Philadelphia, of the state of Pennsylvania, while his family was on holiday. His siblings Victor and Donna were later born on the family farm in his home state of Nebraska. Living a quiet country life, nothing eventful until the age of 8, when Stephen would be then attacked by demons under the command of Karl Mordo. But he was later rescued by the Ancient One, the then Sorcerer Supreme of Earth, a title that Strange himself was destined to obtain. At the age of 10, through circumstances, Stephen was unable to help his brother Victor, who nearly died. Not wanting to lose his sister Donna as well when she found herself in a similar situation, he did all he could and was able to save her life. These incidents are what inspired Stephen Strange to devote his life to practicing medicine. After graduating from high school, Stephen was accepted into a medical college program in New York and was back in Nebraska to celebrate and spend time with Donna. Both were swimming in a lake, while she then suddenly got a cramp and drowned. Stephen, unable to help his sister, he took the loss heavily. It completely shattered him mentally, as he then became a very cold person that made him practice medicine without compassion. Deciding to become obsessed with work, he obtained his medical license in record time, later obtaining a residency within New York University to practice medicine. He became arrogant and cocky with his success, becoming a wealthy and experienced neurosurgeon all by the age of 30. His mother, Beverly, died soon after, and this made Stephen even more distant and more reclusive for a time. Becoming more obsessed with material possessions, he began to charge higher and higher fees for his medical experience. 2 years after his mother's death, his father, Eugene, died also. Unwilling to deal with a third death in his family, he avoided being near his father's deathbed. Later on, Victor barged into Stephen's home and demanded to know why he was not there to see their father on his deathbed during his last days. An argument ensued, and Victor, with a mind full of anger, left Stephen's home, not noticing that a car was rounding the street as it struck and then killed Victor. Upon hearing what happened to his brother, Stephen felt the blame for the deaths of all the members of his family. In 1963, Stephen would be in a near-fatal car crash that would severely hamper the ability of his to use his hands. Unable to practice the intricate and complex activities that needed Hans for his occupation of a neurosurgeon, he was too vain to accept this fate. He tried every single treatment, procedure, trial, and remedy to try and get the full usage of his Hans back that he had before. None of them worked. Losing all of his fortune trying to fix his Hans, he ended up performing shady medical procedures to simply pay off bar tabs. Upon hearing rumors of the so-called Ancient One, Stephen Strange sold the last of his possessions for a plane ticket to the east, where he would either find the Ancient One or die trying. Eventually tracking the Ancient One to Tibet, the Ancient One would then be insulted at how Stephen begged him to heal the hand injuries that plagued his life. Refusing to heal his Hans, Stephen finally gave up, and was about to leave when mystical demons sent by Karl Mordo were about to attack the Ancient One. Stephen was about to warn the Ancient One when Mordo used magic to prevent the warning. The Ancient One easily vanquished the demons, and Stephen swore to learn about magic to fight Mordo and evil. As then, the Ancient One decided to take Strange as a student, as the Ancient One knew of Mordo's evil intentions all along. Through years of training and discipline, the Ancient One taught Stephen Strange the mystical arts, how to harness, use, and direct mystical and cosmic energy from within himself and the environments he found himself in. Added to this, he learned enchantments to summon mystical beings from extra-dimensional sources to aid him in his endeavors if or when he possibly needed it. Most notably, the Vishanti. Karl Mordo took note of Stephen Strange's ability to use magic, as the two will become lifelong enemies. During his young career, Stephen Strange, now called Dr. Strange, encountered heroes and villains alike and began to create a career of helping people and becoming someone of great power as the Ancient One before him. In the 1970s, Strange would return to New York and set up an establishment in the Greenwich Village of Manhattan, accompanied by an aide, Wong, the latest of a line of warriors who had served the Ancient One for hundreds of years. With most of Marvel's heroes debuting in the 1960s, such as the Fantastic Four and Spider-Man, being blunt with their public identity, Dr. Strange was slightly in the shadows and did not necessarily want attention due to his falling out as a surgeon and the incidents with his family. On occasion, Dr. Strange has helped New York State authorities and even consulted with the American government on mystical issues. As an early adventure, the Asgard Loki would trick Dr. Strange into attacking Thor before both learned of the plot and teamed up to defeat Loki. Another early adventure had Stephen team up with Spider-Man to save people from another dimension. Spider-Man convinced Dr. Strange to wipe their memories of the traumatic experience, but also their memory of Spider-Man's valiant bravery. Dr. Strange noted this act of selflessness, and both became good friends and have helped each other many times throughout the years. Dr. Strange would soon be pitched in battle with Dormammu, ruler of the Dark Dimension, master of the Mindless Ones, crude beings from another dimension near Dormammu's realm, and an old foe of the Ancient One. Sensing the weakening of the Ancient One's power, Dormammu decided that it was time to attack the Earth and this plane of existence. Dormammu challenged Strange to a magical duel in the Dark Dimension. Strange accepted and ventured forth. While he went there, he came across a young mystic named Clea, daughter of Umar and sister of Dormammu. Strange would be instantly attracted to Clea, as she pleaded with both Dormammu and Strange to avoid fighting. Later, Clea would explain that if Dormammu were to die in battle, the Mindless Ones would wreak havoc within the Dark Dimension due to its ruler being dead, hence a power imbalance. Strange would not listen to the battle warning and engaged Dormammu. Although within the Dark Dimension Dormammu is nearly infinite in power, the duel weakened Dormammu to the point that the containment sphere that kept the Mindless Ones at bay almost collapsed. Sensing this, and remember what Clea said before, Strange actually used his mystic arts to empower Dormammu to repair the sphere and save the Dark Dimension. Somewhat feeling honor-bound, Dormammu was angry with the fact that he had used Strange's help, and decided to spare Earth and Dr. Strange's plane of existence. Dormammu swore revenge and became another of Doctor Strange's most deadly foes. Remaining a special consultant on mystical issues, he has helped other teams such as the Avengers, Fantastic Four, and Uncanny X-Men. After attending the wedding of Reed Richards and Susan Storm, Stephen once again found Clea in his life. Not wanting to lose her again, he professed his love for her, whom she accepted and agreed to live with him in New York. Another important situation with Stephen Strange was when he faced the threat of the Undying Ones, a powerful threat under the employ of the Nameless One. Needing the aid of Prince Namor, the Submariner, and Bruce Banner, the Incredible Hulk, but not getting it from either of them, he used the mystic arts to control them mentally so they would aid him in the battle. Earth would be spared, but Stephen would be disgusted with himself for manipulating men with his magical powers. It reminded him of how he was earlier in his life. Deciding to forsake the mystic arts, he decided to become a doctor to help people in that profession once more. A brief costume and name change had him being a regular doctor for a period of time until Karl Mordo, now under the guise of Baron Mordo, tried to kill him. Failing, it forced Stephen Strange to become a mystic once more. Doctor Strange would also have an encounter with the Hulk and superhero team known as the Defenders, who visited Doctor Strange and Clea in their residence, the Sanctum Sanctorum. Stephen found it a welcome change from his semi-reclusive nature, as he normally would only reside in his home with Wong and Clea. During this time, he found another close friend in the Silver Surfer, Norrin Radd. One of the most important instances of his life was when he fought minions of the extra-dimensional elder god, Shuma-Gorath, who seek to gain access into this dimension through the mind of the Ancient One himself. Forced to kill the Ancient One with his own hands, Shuma-Gorath was prevented from access into this realm as the Ancient One became one with eternity itself. Now formally and officially the Sorcerer Supreme of Earth, Strange immediately buckled mentally under the added stress to what he already deals with on a daily basis. Seeking familiar comfort, Dr. Strange used the Book of the Vishanti to try and revive his brother Victor, but ultimately failed. Through circumstances, Dr. Strange would also be offered the chance to merge with Eternity as the Ancient One did, but Strange refused and was stripped of the title of Sorcerer Supreme, a title that he would later retrieve. Clea would be later in pitched battle against Umar, who had taken over the Dark Dimension from Dormammu, and not knowing that they were actually mother and daughter. Strange would help Clea, and she would become the rightful ruler of the Dark Dimension. Sadly, their duties meant that they would have to end their relationship. Eventually, Dormammu would reclaim the Dark Dimension with the aid of Umar, and Clea would leave in exile with Stephen. Doctor Strange next found himself with the remaining heroes of Earth against Thanos, who used the Infinity Gauntlet to eradicate half of all living life within the universe. Teaming up with them to stop him, they were victorious in reversing the consequences. Doctor Strange now battles foes and aiding the superhuman community alike, all the while remaining as the Sorcerer Supreme of Earth. The Ancient One, real name unknown, alias the High Lama, the Ancient One. First appearance as High Lama. Amazing Adventures, Issue 1, 1961. As the Ancient One, Strange Tales, Issue 110, 1963. The man who eventually became known as the Ancient One was born over 500 years ago in a remote village, Kamar Taj, within modern Tibet. This man, as others of the time period, was a farmer. However, he befriended an elder of the village, Karl, who had somehow learned of the mystic arts. Deciding to take the man who would become the Ancient One as his student, the duo would spend years learning the mystic arts. The young one wished to use what he was learning to help others, while his master, Karl, decided to use his mystic arts to build an empire. Unknown to the young Ancient One, Karl slowly began to exert mind control over the villagers of Kamar Taj. The young Ancient One and Karl soon used magic to eliminate poverty, sickness, and danger from Kamar Taj, and through the mind control elected to have Karl crowned as their king. Discovering the treachery of Karl, the young Ancient One tried to warn the villagers but was stricken down and crippled by a mystic blast. Eventually, the villagers of Kamartaj were nothing more than mindless puppets of Kalu. Turning the men of the village into soldiers, and with the magical enchantments upon them, they were ordered to attack another nearby village, and the conquered population turned into slaves. Planning even more conquests, Kalu had the young Ancient One imprisoned within the center of Kamartaj. Still a novice of the mystic arts, he mentally pleaded with the mystic energies to strike Kalu and save the people of Kamartaj. Not knowing that his call was actually being heard, mystic energies came out and wiped out the population of Kamartaj, and Kalu fled. The young Ancient One was freed from his paralysis and would continue to age normally, although at a slower rate. Using his experience with Kalu and Kamartaj, the Ancient One pledged his life to fighting evil sorcerers. Leaving his village, the young Ancient One wandered the east and heard legends about a group called the Ancient Ones who protected humans from evil magic. Becoming a student of theirs, he became extremely skilled in the arts, so skilled that he became the first human to meet with eternity, the manifestation of the universe as it presented him with the Eye of Amagatto. Becoming the first Sorcerer Supreme, the Ancient One successfully kept Dormammu from taking over the earth for 500 years. Becoming so skilled that he even acquired time-traveling abilities and traveled back to ancient Babylon and fought ancient beings to obtain the Book of the Vishanti. In more recent times, the Ancient One outlived all other members of the Ancient Order due to what happened hundreds of years ago in Kamartaj. Approached by a young Karl Mordo of Transylvania who wished to become his student, the Ancient One actually knew of his advanced age and desired a successor. The Ancient One knew that Mordo had no good in his heart, but had potential within the mystic arts. Eventually, he decided to take him as a student, hoping to influence Mordo to do good deeds, or at least keep his villainy in check. As a result of the failed heir and Baron Mordo, the Ancient One becomes somewhat pessimistic about teaching others until another, in the form of Stephen Strange, approached him about healing his hands from an automobile accident. Refusing because of the disappointment with Karl Mordo and not wanting to repeat the mistake, Stephen Strange was rebuffed and about to leave when he noticed an attack from Mordo. The Ancient One repelled the attack, but was impressed with Strange. Later, taking him on as a student, and through the righteousness of Strange, proclaimed him his true heir. With Dr. Strange as the Sorcerer Supreme, the Ancient One mostly lived in a quiet retirement, occasionally informing Stephen Strange on errands and even helping against such villains as Kalu. When the extra-dimensional god Shumagora tried to gain access to Earth through the Ancient One's mind, he told Strange to destroy his physical body, which Strange regrettably did. Physically dead, the Ancient One has occasionally manifested himself through the astral plane for various reasons. Clea. First appearance. Strange Tales, issue 126, 1964. Origin, Dr. Strange, issues 8 and 9, 1975. Clea was born the daughter of Prince Orini, the rightful and former ruler of the Dark Dimension, and Umar, sister of the Dread One Dormammu. Umar later became disgusted with herself for the fling that she had with Orini and abandoned Clea for him to raise on his own, not wanting anything to do with her. Dormammu long sought to conquer the earth, but was held back by various magical arcane forces. In more recent eons, the Ancient One and Dr. Strange, the Sorcerer Supremes of Earth. The first time Strange ventured into the Dark Dimension to fight against Dormammu, Clea aided him, and the two soon developed a deep fascination for one another. Umar first gained control of the Dark Dimension after Dormammu was banished from it, and used Clea as a hostage to extract revenge from Strange. However, the plot was foiled, but the Ancient One commented that Clea's safety can only be guaranteed if the two were to essentially permanently part ways. With Strange focusing on arcane issues on Earth and Clea rightfully becoming the ruler of the Dark Dimension, the two regretfully parted ways, but soon Dormammu escaped and took his position as the ruler of the Dark Dimension. Clea left with Strange, agreeing to reside at his residence in the Sanctum Sanctorum. The two became lovers, and Strange helped Clea to become an even more adept sorceress. Wong. First appearance, Strange Tales, issue 110, 1963. Name revealed, Strange Tales, issue 147, 1966. Modern origin, Dr.Strange, issue 75, 1986. Wong is the descendant who bears striking resemblance to his ancestor Khan, a Chinese monk who lived roughly 1,000 years ago and who was a student of the occult. Khan was also a healer and teacher of martial arts, and through his school of monks promoted peace and tolerance through martial arts. One day, Khan, while traveling, discovered a strange temple. Deciding to explore it, Khan was drawn against his will through a mystical black mirror into an extra-dimensional realm. There, Khan met Jahan, King Oshtur, and his sister, Princess Shilamar, and their court magician, Wong, the one who had caused the spell drawing Khan through the mirror to begin with. Jahan pursued Khan to lead his people in a war against the wizard kings who ruled this other extra-dimensional realm. Khan agreed to do so. During this time in the realm, Khan and Shilamar fell in love with one another. Leading the forces, Khan was eventually victorious and killed all but one of the wizard kings. Khan later noticed that something was wrong. He was part of Wong's own secret plans for dominance. Wong wanted to sacrifice Khan and Shilamar to the Nagari. Shilamar actually, through circumstance, became the conduit for great power and ended up being a powerful sorceress, but nearly incapable of love. Killing Wong, Shilamar sent Khan back to China. Back on Earth, Khan deeply regretted being a pawn in Wong's plot and not being able to help Shilamar. To atone for this, Khan offered his firstborn son of himself and his descendants to any mystic who used their powers to protect others. Ever since then, the firstborn males of Wong's family have continued this pledge. For the past 10 generations, the males of Wong's family have directly served the Ancient One. Wong's father presented him to the Ancient One, and the Ancient One decided to send Wong to a monastery to learn how to devote his life to mysticism. There, Wong began to learn the martial arts, and his father soon met a young couple when the three of them decided to form a marriage pact where Wong would marry the young couple's unborn daughter. When Wong was finished with his training, he was sent to America to serve under Dr. Strange, who succeeded the Ancient One as the Sorcerer Supreme of Earth. A minor aide of Strange, Sarah Wolf, apparently had strong feelings for Wong. He slowly started to show feelings for her as well, but soon stopped anything when she was the one who freed Baron Mordo when he was imprisoned in the Sanctum Sanctorum. Added to this, Wong also was informed that the couple, with his father had made the marriage pact, had actually finally had a daughter, Yimei Chang, who lives in New York as well. The relationship between the two of them is going along well. Wong continues to be in service to Dr. Strange, and he has proclaimed that his firstborn son will continue the tradition started by Khan 1,000 years ago. Baron Karl Mordo II. Real name, Karl Amadeus Mordo. First appearance, Strange Tales, issue 111, 1963. Origin, Strange Tales, issue 115, 1963. Modern origin, Dr. Strange, Sorcerer Supreme, issues 6 through 8, 1989. Born in 1921, Karl Mordo was the son of Nikolai Mordo, a minor Transylvanian nobleman who was peeraged to Baron when his ancestral lands were annexed into the Austro-Hungarian Empire before the First World War. Bitter and angry over the empire's defeat and partition, as well as corrupt and inept generals and politicians, Nikolai Mordo sought to bring honor and prestige back to his country and heritage through magical sorcery. Through circumstances, Nikolai became the student of Miraka, who was queen of the Gypsies. She later bore the illegitimate daughter to Nikolai, Lila. However, through circumstances, a German nobleman, Baron Karl, desired a grandson to inherit his title and arranged for Nikolai to marry his daughter Sarah. This union produced a son, christened Karl Amadeus in 1921. With plans to rebuild the Carpathian Empire through sorcery almost complete, Baron Crawler ordered her daughter to kill Nikolai, which she eagerly did. Leaving that region of Transylvania, Karl Mordo, tutored by his grandfather until overhearing a conversation one day that made him bitter and evil. Desiring to become the second Baron Mordo, Karl sought to achieve all his father could not. As Baron Crawler helped to bring the rise of the Nazi Party and Adolf Hitler in Germany with arcane magic, he had heard about the Ancient One through the occult and instructed his grandson to become a pupil of the Ancient One to help the Nazi cause even more. The young Baron Mordo accepted, not knowing that Crawler put enchantments onto him so that anything he learned, Crawler would indirectly learn as well. Through the enchantments, Crawler learned of Dormammu from the dealings of Mordo with the Ancient One. Crawler sought to use the negative energies of Europe during the Battle of the Blitz, combined with his own dark arts as well as the young Baron Mordo himself, to force open a portal to allow Dormammu into this plane of existence. However, through circumstances as well as Nick Fury and the Howling Commandos, the plan was thwarted and Crawler became comatose as a result. The young Baron Mordo was able to escape. After the war, Sarah Mordo returned to the Mordo family castle to take care of her vegetable-like father, and the young Baron Mordo finally found an opportunity to avenge his father's death. Baron Mordo captured both his mother and grandfather and sacrificed their souls to Dormammu, thus sealing a pact between Mordo and the Dread One, Dormammu. This act caused the Ancient One to feel that his pupil, Baron Mordo, was now beyond total redemption but could do nothing, for fear that his advanced age and Mordo's own grim power might be enough for even Mordo to attack the Ancient One himself. This caused the Ancient One to not want to have an heir until Stephen Strange came asking for his help nearly 20 years later. Through attempts to attack the Ancient One through time travel and other circumstances, the feud between Mordo and Strange had them become mortal enemies, though most of their earliest battles aren't recorded, simply mentioned within other stories. Dormammu had his own plans to kill Strange, and often Mordo would get in the way of them. One of the best examples was when Dormammu kidnapped the Ancient One and used him to lure Strange to the Dark Dimension for battle. Dr. Strange and Dormammu were soon in pitched conflict, and Dormammu venting his wrath upon Stephen when Mordo took the opportunity to strike Stephen on the back of the head, knocking him unconscious. Enraged and with his own sense of honor, Dormammu banished Mordo to another dimension and waited for Stephen Strange to recover before continuing the battle, before being defeated by Strange. After the Ancient One's physical death during a confrontation with Shumagorath, Dr. Strange actually tried to reconcile with Baron Mordo due to the fact that they were both students of the Ancient One and thought that everything should be forgotten due to the death of their teacher. Not wanting anything to do with Strange, Mordo rebuffed the concept of reconciliation and the two remained bitter foes as ever. Baron Mordo was one of the villains who was at the mercy of the Beyonder and schemed to turn the situation to his favor, making a deal to sell his soul to two high-level cosmic beings, Mephisto and Satanish, for power. Strange banished the two beings and actually defeated Mordo with a single punch, a quick end to a so-called grand scheme. With repeated exile to extra-dimensional locations being unreliable in imprisoning Baron Mordo, Stephen instead imprisoned Baron Mordo within his own residence, the Sanctum Sanctorum, instead. With this imprisonment being actually successful, a minor servant of Stephen Strange began to feel pity for Mordo and eventually released him from his bondage. With Dormammu being released from captivity by Clea, Strange's aide hoped that Mordo would help Dr. Strange, but Mordo quickly went to the side of his master, Dormammu. Dormammu hoped to gain favor with his sister, Umar. Through circumstance, Mordo was once again tossed away by Dormammu. With his magical power almost depleted, Karl Mordo soon discovered they had terminal cancer, Knowing that he did not have that long to live, instead of a grand final scheme, Mordo decided to actually make amends with all he had wronged throughout his life. Returning to the Ancient One's former residence in Tibet, he desired to live the rest of his life in peace with the monks. Strange, who had repeated setbacks of his own, also came back to Tibet for peace, and it was Strange who ironically kept the feud alive by nearly beating Mordo to death before the monks restrained him and cast him out of the Ancient One's residence. However, through circumstances, another was watching from the shadows. Mordo's illegitimate daughter, seeking to succeed where her father failed. Astrid Mordo, who was Baron Mordo's daughter through various circumstances, transferred her father's consort to Strange by magic. Bringing her father and Strange to the long-abandoned castle of her grandfather Nikolai Mordo, Astrid wanted to give her father the ultimate revenge and satisfaction by finally killing Stephen Strange. Karl Mordo had enough of the endless cycle of hate, death, and torment, and truly and sincerely not wanting to cause any more bloodshed, Mordo reabsorbed the cancer strain, then cast his daughter into another dimension. Karl Amadeus Mordo died soon after, ironically saving the life of his most hated and despised foe, Stephen Strange, for the last half-century. Dormammu. First appearance, Strange Tales, issue 126, 1964. Modern Origins, Dr.Strange, issue 71, 1985. Doctor Strange, Sorcerer Supreme, issues 22 and 23, 1990. Born untold eons in a distant dimension called the Fault Line, Dormammu and his sister Umar gathered and amassed more energy from their dimension unto themselves. Ultimately destroying their parent, Source, they took varying forms and left their home dimension to see what else existed in the cosmos. Their searches ultimately brought them to the Dark Dimension, which was then under the third millennium rule of King Ulnar, and the dimension had been under a true and multiracial peace of nearly 30,000 years. Despite Ulnar's royal advisor's wishes, King Ulnar granted Dormammu and Umar sanctuary within the Dark Dimension on the condition that Dormammu and Umar reveal their secret for traveling between dimensions and absorbing energy within it unto themselves. For Ulnar wished to do the same to regions that bordered the Dark Dimension. Dormammu agreed, and through circumstance or on purpose, the dimension where the mindless ones were discovered. Extremely powerful but mindless creatures. Once the mindless ones were freed within the Dark Dimension, a good percent of the total population of the original Dark Dimension was slaughtered, including King Ulnar himself. And the combined power of Dormammu and Umar was enough to seal the mindless ones and hold them at bay. Using chaos to kill the rest of Ulnar's advisors, Dormammu was proclaimed the new ruler of the Dark Dimension, and Ulnar's son, Orini, who was an infant at the time, deemed no threat and allowed to live under Dormammu and Umar's rule. Through this time, Dormammu had conflicts with cosmic-level beings such as the chief Asgardian lord Odin, Living Tribunal, and Eternity. Soon the Earth began to attract his attention, but was repulsed by the Vishanti and Amagatto. Dormammu's sister Umar later went insane through the act of childbirth due to a tryst with Orini, as he took this as a chance to banish Umar from the Dark Dimension. Orini soon began to raise their daughter Clea in service to Dormammu. In the 1940s, Baron Mordo proclaimed allegiance to Dormammu and sought to take advantage of the Second World War to control the Earth. Sealing a pact between them by offering the lives of his mother and grandfather, the Eye of Amagatto was stolen from Dormammu and through circumstances came into the possession of the Nazis and the Red Skull. Captain America and Bucky Barnes fought against the Skull and Dormammu with help from the Ancient One who summoned Nick Fury and the Howling Commandos. In more recent years, Dormammu had a renewed interest in conquering the Earth, sending a messenger to the Ancient One to inform him of this, with Dr. Strange venturing into the Dark Dimension, Dormammu almost seemed insulted that the Ancient One's student came when he addressed the Ancient One himself. Sending mystic attackers to kill Strange, he bested all of them. Dormammu decided to fight Dr. Strange himself, and through the battle proved himself to be more stronger than Dormammu had anticipated. Using more power to combat Strange from the Dark Dimension, he unknowingly weakened the barrier that held back the Mindless Ones, and they actually broke through. Dr. Strange noticed this, and not wanting innocents to be killed because of their battle, decided to give Dormammu enough energy to restore the barrier, and once again keep the Mindless Ones restrained. Somewhat in debt to Strange for the help, Dr. Strange demanded that Dormammu never again threaten Earth. This proclamation earned the full wrath of Dormammu, and he now despised Stephen Strange even more than the Ancient One. Dormammu later hatched a plan to attack Strange to break the vow by giving more power to Baron Mordo, who would attack Strange. For if someone else killed Strange, the vow would be broken. However, Mordo was defeated and Dormammu repulsed, but not before Clea was banished from the Dark Dimension. Still angry about the vow and the setback with Strange, for unknown reasons, Dormammu decided to attack Eternity, which was the manifestation of all within the Marvel Universe. Even Dormammu's full power wasn't enough to damage Eternity at all, and Dormammu himself was banished to the mysterious realm unknown, where ironically Clea was. During this time, Umar took advantage of Dormammu not being the Lord of the Dark Dimension and became the ruler in her own right. Clea being able to escape and mystically influencing Umar to release Dr. Strange, who had been imprisoned there, to help release her from the realm unknown. Dr. Strange stood before Dormammu and the direct portal to Earth, with Dormammu himself being unable to continue because of the vow to not attack Earth. Through even more circumstances and even the death of his servant Baron Mordo, Dormammu still seeks to control the Earth, but with Dr. Strange and his allies ready to stand against the Dreadlord, Dormammu no matter what scheme he may be planning. Umar. First appearance, Strange Tales, issue 150, November 1966. Modern origins, Dr. Strange, issue 71, 1985. Dr. Strange, Sorcerer Supreme, issue 22, 1990. Despite being nearly equal in terms of power to her brother Dormammu, Umar has actually been quite silent in terms of taking over the Earth or influencing others for her own gains. After Dormammu and Umar took over the Dark Dimension, Dormammu decided to manifest himself in a more physical form to attend to his duties. Umar, on the other hand, decided to remain a being of pure energy with no physical form. Dormammu's head actually began to emit flames from it, which was a sign that he was a ruler of the Dark Dimension. Apparently, the ruler of the dimension has the flames. It's not a feature that Dormammu decided for his appearance when he decided to adapt a form to this plane of existence. The young Orini, son of King Olnar, grew up servicing Dormammu and Umar. Soon he became obsessed with her. Eventually, Umar came to a more physical form as well, and Orini decided to take advantage of this, eventually seducing her, and the two had a sexual encounter. Right after the encounter, Umar regretted the experience and cast Orini away. As a result of the affair, Umar gave birth to a daughter, Clea. Eventually, Umar had her own ambitions to rule the Dark Dimension, and her brother Dormammu eventually came to view her as a threat and cast her from the dimension, where she remained for quite a bit of time. After Dormammu was cast out of the Dark Dimension by Eternity, Umar used this chance to return to the Dark Dimension and become ruler, with the flames of rule now engulfing her head to show the transfer of power was complete. However, Umar noticed that in recent times Dr. Strange had always foiled her brother's plots to rule the Earth. Eventually, Umar would face her daughter Clea in mystical battle. However, unknown to Umar, Clea used the gemstone to broadcast the battle's sounds and images all across the Dark Dimension, as the populace learned that Clea was the daughter of Umar. Wanting to win at any cost, Umar actually brought down the barrier that held back the Mindless Ones, and Dr. Strange, who had come to Clea's aid, brought creatures from the realm unknown to help battle the mindless ones. Soon the flames of rule slowly disappeared from Umar's head, showing that the population of the Dark Dimension was losing faith in her rule, and instead the flames engulfed Clea's own head. Eventually the mindless ones were put back, and Clea was put as the one true ruler of the Dark Dimension, due to the fact of her lineage from Umar, Dormammu, and the Prince Orini and the beloved King Olnar. After the battle, both Umar and Orini were placed in suspended animation and both banished from the Dark Dimension. The Mindless Ones. First appearance, Strange Tales, issue 127, 1964. The Mindless One's full origin and dimension of origin is unknown, but what is known that it was a location near the Dark Dimension. King Olnar wanted to turn the Mindless Ones into his own personal mindless army, and proposed this to Dormammu and Umar when they first discovered his home. After the dimensions merged, the Mindless Ones went on a rampage and ultimately killed King Olnar and a decent amount of the Dark Dimension's population before being held back by Dormammu and Umar. Essentially, they are the shock troops for Dormammu, or his own personal army. The Mindless Ones have a humanoid appearance with a single yellow eye and no other distinguishing features. On average, they stand around 7 feet tall and are of grayish skin color with no other features. They possess no intelligence and will attack anything or anyone in sight, including each other. They can only follow commands issued by magical arcane orders. Besides Dr.Strange, the Mindless Ones have also fought against the Fantastic Four, the Avengers, the Uncanny X-Men, and Spider-Man. The Vishanti. First appearance, mention, Strange Tales issue 115, 1963. Full appearance, Marvel Premiere issue 5, 1972. The Vishanti are extraordinarily powerful extra-dimensional beings who have protected Earth's galaxy for untold eons. It is unknown or unfathomable to guess who or what they truly are. When they have shown themselves to mortal or lower-level beings who ask to use their power, they have appeared as 3 separate manifestations: a young woman, an older man, and a tiger. These may be 3 separate beings, or a single being that chooses to show itself as 3 separate visages. These beings are expected or imagined to transcend gender, but it may be a matter of choice that they appear as these representations. Oshtur. Oshtur is generally regarded and represented as a female entity, known as Omnipotent Oshtur. She may be considered the most powerful of the Vishanti if anything like that can be applied to one such as them or that. Because of the title alone, although it may not be correct, often called the Gracious Lady due to the fact that it also might be assumed that she has had the most contact with lesser beings out of all the members of the Vishanti. Dr.Strange once appealed to her for help and she replied in kind. Physical form is often seen as either being green or golden-like in skin color, with slight vines coming from her head. Eyes have none, usually glowing with unfathomable power. Oshtur supposedly created the Book of the Vishanti. Hoggoth, or referred to by Dr. Strange as Hoary Hoggoth, implies that he might be the oldest of the Vishanti. Called the Lord of Hosts, sorcerers often invoke him the most when casting or rebuffing spells supposedly. When appearing before lesser beings, he or it takes the form of an older man of blue or purple skin color. There's even been times when he's taken the form of animals, even Amagatto's tiger form. Amagatto, the member of the Vishanti who has had arguably the most dealings with Dr. Strange, was actually created by Oshtur. Amagatto has often been seen in the form of a tiger. Just to give a scope of the level of the power of the Vishanti, Amagatto once easily fought against Galactus and did not even use it or his full power, while Hoggoth and Oshtur were uninterested in the battle. Technically, Amagatto was the first Sorcerer Supreme of Earth, as he or it created the Eye of Amagatto, which is one of Doctor Strange's most iconic magical pieces of equipment. Amagatto is considered the all-seeing. One time when Doctor Strange used the Eye of Amagatto, he was drawn into Amagatto's home realm, away from the other Vishanti, and he took the form of a caterpillar from Lewis Carroll's Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, because Amagatto took that image from Stephen's mind. It's been said that Amagatto takes a more relaxed stance when in the presence of Strange, but is more serious when with the other members of the Vishanti. However, out of the three, his behavior has sometimes been considered the most erratic, sometimes happy or joyful, the next being angry and destructive. Despite all this, Amagatto is the key power source of Doctor Strange when he uses his magic for various deeds. Now the discussion will go to the items that Doctor Strange uses. The Eye of Amagatto. First appearance, Strange Tales, issue 115, December 1963. When first designing the eye, Steve Ditko drew inspiration from the real all-seeing eye of Buddha, known among Buddhists as the Eye of Snail Martyrs. The Eye of Amagatto itself has a bit of confusion surrounding it. Some consider Amagatto himself or itself to be the eye, while others consider the eye to be a tool of Amagatto, him or itself, sort of like a beacon or an avatar to channel Amagatto's power through. Two known sources for the eye's origins are as thus. That is, a creation of Amagatto himself or itself. Being Amagatto the all-seeing, an eye would make perfect sense. Amagatto is fully aware each time the eye is used, and each time the eye is used, a record is made of the circumstances that the eye is in. Some say that Amagatto himself may view these at a later time. The other source has it that the eye was a mystic artifact found in the cosmos by Amagatto himself or itself as he or it journeyed through it. On one occasion, Doctor Strange showed it to some members of the Avengers and commented that it was one of the most mystical items within this plane of existence. The Cloak of Levitation. Blue color. Strange Tales, issue 14, November 1963. Red color. Strange Tales, issue 127, 1964. The two cloaks that Doctor Strange uses were actually given to him by the Ancient One. Doctor Strange cannot fly or levitate under his own power. The cloak can move itself by command of Doctor Strange. It's presumed to be centuries old due to the fact that the Ancient One used it before Stephen. Traits, abilities, and such of the cloak are as resistance to damage from the elements, physical attacks, and mystical attacks. The ability to change shape to mimic other garments such as a suit. Ability to act upon the will of its last wearer even when not in direct physical contact or even in the same room as the wearer. The ability to act as an extra limb, grabbing, striking, or even wrapping around items or targets. It takes a great deal of effort to damage it, but through circumstances it has been done. But it takes a great deal of effort to repair it also. One time, through a test for the Living Tribunal, Doctor Strange tested his magical arts by mending it with magic. The Book of the Vishanti. A fictional book of magic originally first created by the Vishanti. It's a book that has passed through many ownership claims throughout history, and countless sorcerers have added their own spells and incantations to it. It contains every counterspell known in existence. Its full depth cannot be fully grasped by mortals, as once even Doctor Strange read verses from it to try and revive his dead brother, but accidentally read the wrong incantations, so someone of even Stephen's intellect can easily make mistakes when using the tome. The residence of Doctor Strange. The Sanctum Sanctorum. Location 177A Bleecker Street, Greenwich Village, New York, United States of America. The site upon which the townhouse was built was once that of pagan sacrifices and arcane Native American rituals, dating back before European discovery and settlement. Because of the arcane actions that took place here, the structure of the townhouse and the grounds beneath it have become a focal point for supernatural energies. It is one reason that this was one of the reasons why Dr. Strange decided to buy the location to build his house upon. By local people, some consider it to be haunted. The Sanctum Sanctorum is protected from magical invasion by an intricate permanent spell of mystical force devised by Dr. Strange himself. The Eye of Amagatto is actually kept in its own special room on the 3rd floor. It is separate from Dr. Strange's meditation room and study. This narrative is to give the viewer and listener a good understanding of the character Dr. Strange and some of the more important supporting characters within the Sorcerer Supreme's life. Additions might be made if demand is high enough or descriptions for characters not mentioned. Discuss the character concept and anything related to the Sorcerer Supreme of Earth.